Earlier, the device was just sitting at the counter taking payment. Now, with that device moving to the cloud, it is just an interaction point.
It actually started moving into a contextual way. Like, say, for example, banking or fintech can be contextually embedded into various things. Like, say, for example, we ourselves at Zoho, Made in India, ERP, right?
I'm very proud to say that many parts of that were actually developed in India by engineers based out of India.
You cannot build a technology where you think people are walking into branch. No, they don't walk into branch anymore.
Before we start the panel discussion, thanks a lot for all the panelists who've traveled from all over the country, east, west, south, from all over the place. So thanks again. So like the topic suggests, we'll be talking about devices, rising significance of devices in fintech. So we'll start with you, Ripunjay. Why don't you share your thoughts, and you take care of the offline business. So where does device really fit in there?
So over a period of time, say we have in Paytm we have started fintech or a payment business 15 years, but last 3-4 years have really changed because the technology is changing. And you're right that the device which used to be a passive node at the merchant counter or at the payment center has now becoming an actively engaged piece. So if we talk about that, earlier the device was just sitting at the counter taking payment. Now with that device moving to the cloud, it is just an interaction point. The data is captured, transactions are received, but all the functioning is happening at the cloud. And especially with AI coming up, and AI coming at a much lesser cost, at it used to be like 1 year back or 6 months back, the way devices are evolving and the way we see device evolving in next 3-4 years is huge. Today, if we are talking about, say, Paytm legendary soundbox, we have recently launched an AI-based soundbox, which can not just take payment, but also solve problems for the merchant and consumer. When we were giving demo at the last event of GFF, there was a foreign tourist which said that I have a problem interacting with shopkeepers while I'm taking a payment at a tourist spot. Today, most of the shopkeepers are not able to interact. But with the help of an AI device, voice taking from a language and converting that into another language is just a small piece. So it is right that today it is not just the device or the passive device which used to be there. With the help of the cloud and the intelligence behind those clouds, that can actually change the game for a developing country like India.
Siva, I'll go over to you next. What are your thoughts on devices? What are the made in India things that are happening at Zoho?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for this opportunity. We are actually living in interesting times where this generation is actually seeing a lot of technology changes. So we have seen banking or fintech, whatever way you call it, move from desktop to the cloud. Okay, so that was first thing that we saw as a generation. And from cloud, it was like the connected cloud. So once things came into the cloud, then it's all about connections, right? From there, we saw banking actually getting to the contextual banking. Instead of banking being a standalone piece, I have to log into my net banking software and doing all the transactions there. It actually started moving into a contextual way. Like, say, for example, banking or fintech can be contextually embedded into various things. Like, say, for example, we ourselves at Zoho, Made in India, ERP, right? So contextually, you can initiate all the banking transactions from your finance software. So that's the way we envision things. Like, so we actually work closely with ICICI to launch this concept of connected banking way back in 2018. So from once it became connected banking, then it's all about the devices, right? Say, for example, once it is in the cloud, then it is all about AI and IoT. So we saw UPI being through the connected devices, right? One excellent demo was done during GFF, where actually you can just pay your petrol charges right from within your car, connected devices. The car dashboard getting automatically connected to your phone, right? So that's the direction in which you are moving, AI and IoT. So we are going to see phenomenal this thing, right? So as he rightly said, voice is going to be the primary interface in these devices. A lot of intelligence in the back end and making a huge change.
Guru, I'll come to you a bit later. I'll go over to Mayank from Made in India to Google. I think we should get Google's thoughts there on, do you need Made in India tools over there or?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nivedita, and again, thanks for the opportunity to be here. It's been a great experience for the past couple of days, interacting with a lot of folks in the financing field. So I'll answer that in two parts. So one is just in terms of what is made in India by Google itself, right? I'll give you an example. How many of you heard about Gemini? Probably raise of hands. Cool. That's pretty cool. Hopefully somebody took a picture. But just on that, right? When Gemini Live, the application where you can interact and talk to an AI avatar, right? I think that what Tripunjay and Siva were also referencing to. So India was one of the select launch markets globally when Gemini was launched. In fact, Gemini then was launched in 9 Indian languages. So often when we go out on the field, we give out demos when we are talking to Gemini Live, and there is somebody who is demoing the device and he's talking in Kannada, but then he's also coming from the Maratha belt, so he then switches to Marathi. So a lot of those things are being built in India and for India. Another example which I can tell you, I know we'll touch upon security as well as we talk about fintech, but within Android, we have something called as live threat detection. So let's say if there is a transaction or a call which comes in, and that call comes in and that person is asking you to share like a screenshot from an application, which incidentally happens to be a financial application. The platform is intelligent enough right now to tell you that this is a malicious transaction potentially, which is about to happen. I'm very proud to say that many parts of that were actually developed in India by engineers based out of India. So there's a lot that's happening, made in India, in fact, made for the world. I'm sure you will be privy also to the latest investments that we have made in the AI hub in Vizag. But coming to the devices part as well, right? Just to complete that circle. I think as both Ripunjay and Siva mentioned. So what has changed from a devices standpoint is, I'm sure you would remember your first mobile device as it may be. Full disclosure, I used to be a Nokia 3310. Probably that tells you a little bit about my age as well. But the first Android phone came in 2008. Mobiles have shifted from being a delivery mechanism to a full compute mechanism. So as I work with many of the devices that I have, in my pocket today, and to the theme of, from the cloud to the pocket and vice versa, you actually have on-device AI capabilities left to be harnessed. We actually are working with a lot of banking institutions, fintech partners, who can actually leverage these on-device AI capabilities, and these are available right off the cuff on the device itself. So I definitely encourage you to leverage these opportunities which are available on these devices. So we have an open source model which allows you to do multimodal conversations on the device without it being, without it talking to the cloud. We have multiple kinds of flagship devices which have summarization, generation of a description of an image right off the box of the device. And I think there are a lot of, just FYI, globally we're working with a lot of banks as well who want to leverage these capabilities on top of the retail applications of banking. But just to answer your question, right, device is at the center of it being an AI compute engine rather than just being a delivery engine, right? So that's where we have transitioned to right now.
Yeah, Guru, from the universe that you belong to, I think you can elaborate on the lending bit and how tech and devices and lending, everything is coming together.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Uh, Hearing all my co-panelists on the devices, if you look at it, what is the purpose of using the device? You're still probably taking a loan, opening an account, opening an investment. The purpose remains the same. I mean, only thing is what has changed is you're doing through the device. So that's the key change that is happening along with AI help. What we do is once all this is happening, the purpose remains the same and the technology behind this should support it. Because when you open an account in a bank, it goes and sits somewhere. There is a software which takes it and it sits. Now the difference is instead of people walking into branch, they're opening the same thing through device. So does that backend banking software support such things? Is it built for such growth? So that is the change happening in the technology world. If the technology is API first, microservices enabled, it will support all this. So we're focused on enabling growth as the growth on the front end happens through various mediums. Simple example is, I don't know how many of you have been to bank in the last 1 month. Any of you have been to the bank in the last 1 month? There's one person in the audience here. And when I did the survey last time, they've gone to the bank because there was a signature mismatch. Not for applying for a loan. They went because they want a signature mismatch, or they've gone because they want to close a loan. They're finding it difficult to get the final papers to get the papers back. Otherwise, we've not visited a bank at all. Everything happens through the device. So what we focus as a tech is, as the growth is happening on the devices front, whether the tech is capable of handling such changes. You cannot build a technology where you think people are walking into branch. No, they don't walk into branch anymore. Because, for example, in the event of a closure of a loan, we expect person to come to the bank, collect his documents. The softwares are built that way, where software will not work unless you walk into the branch. I'm saying I'm branchless, so how do you manage it, right? So I think we're focusing on building softwares on the banking side, which will enable the growth with such growth in terms of devices, whether it is AI, etc. Second important part is, when I talk about lending, like my co-panelists talked about it, when you apply through a device, the fraud is not disappearing. The fraud is also getting complex. Today, there are at least 450 parameters on the device that is evaluated to check if this device is authentic. Is this the right thing? Is it not anti-money laundering? Making sure of all of that. 400 plus 50 parameters on a single device needs to be evaluated. Because as the growth happens, we have to take care of the quality growth. So how do you take care of the quality growth? So these are the things on the technology front which we are focusing today.
Thanks. So fraud, you've mentioned fraud, and that's the most relevant topic right now whenever we are talking about technology. So Ripunjay, for everything that is good, there are also the other sides that have to be managed. How do you handle risks? How do you handle fraud?
So you're right that for a banking or a fintech industry, the security is very important aspect. And a security card does not only talk about fraud or a financial loss, but since when we are moving towards the cloud ecosystem, there's always a debate of the data security also, because it is the financial credential of an individual which is at the cloud, and we have seen instances that they got leaked. So I think with over a period of time, those cases are becoming less. But yes, fraud is one of the challenges. But with the compute capability increasing tremendously today. So if we talk about 3-4 years back, the algorithms which banks or a fintech used to place to control fraud was terms of manual. That, okay, these are the UPI IDs, or these are the bank account, or these are the cards which have a high propensity to do fraud. So there were risks or checks which were placed on that. But as the time progressed, we have real-time computing capabilities, and we have real-time fraud check mechanism. Like how the device importance is, like in UPI, today you have UPI device binding. So with if you have a device and your UPI ID is there, and if that device suddenly changes because your SIM is lost or somebody has hacked your OTP, you will not be able to do UPI transaction. So that has controlled a fraud to a larger extent. And as sir was also saying that when we have a device which is AI powered, we know who is the user, and we also know the profile of the user. So once we know the profile of the user and there's a backend data computing capability which is there, we can definitely control fraud in a better way. We know whom he's transacting to. So 3-4 years back, or I must say 2 years back, the fraud mechanism were controlled by who is the user. But now with the computing capability and the AI going up, the companies are using fraud prevention with how we pays, because fraudulent customers also pay in a particular way. They do large money transfers to a bank account. They do large money transfer to suspicious bank accounts. So because of the device being there, we are able to control in a fraud much better way. But data security is one thing which, especially on the cloud, where companies have to work on. But I'm sure there are a lot of things which have recently improved on the cloud players also, which is helping the industry to grow.
Zoho, how is it managing risk? What is the risk mitigation plan?
So we, just in line with the various players in the industry, we actually extensively use AI engine. So we are relatively new to fintech. So we have been mostly on the SaaS side. So everyone actually knows Zoho as a SaaS player. We got into the payment space a couple of years ago. So we actually have a extensive engine, AI engine, which actually focuses on the fraud detection. In fact, the AI engine is so powerful because, as Ripunjay sir rightly said, earlier we used to have a lot of manual mechanism to identify the various things. Now, actually, the AI engine can correlate things in such a way that the fraud clusters can be easily found. Like, say, for example, there will be some link between some accounts, right? Someone using the same email ID somewhere, the same account to which the money would have moved from one fraudulent account, through which we can actually correlate and find the entire cluster. So in fact, we were able to find one such cluster a few months ago. It was a huge cluster. So we extensively use AI. And one other thing that I want to tell here is the cost of fraud. Generally, people do ask me that being in the fintech, the payment space, why cannot you reduce the MDR? Why should you charge actually some 1.x% or 2%? Outside India, it's much worse. Actually, it's like 2.9 plus 30 cents is the standard, right? So why cannot you do that? And one of the core reason why players like us are not able to do that is because of the cost associated with fraud. So once we all work collectively, be it at the device level or the OS level or the tech level or the banking space, once we can actually collectively work, collaborate, raise red flags based on various parameters and empower the layer that is sitting at the top, we will be able to bring down fraud, and that actually can be a massive savings, and that saving can actually be passed on to the customers.
Guru, how good are the regulatory guardrails in India in this fintech universe?
Perfect question, because there are two parts to it. One we call as money laundering and anti-money laundering laws. The other part is the fraud. The money laundering is very well governed. There are reports as per the regulator which each bank and non-banking finance company has to provide on a regular basis. Suspicious transaction reporting, cash transaction reporting, etc. That is well governed, and in fact, we work with large banks like ICICI, SBI, where we build certain AI models also. This we call as a more of a regulatory technology, RegTech, when it comes to anti-money laundering. But if you look at fraud, fraud is more domain-oriented. It is not really regulated still. A credit card fraud is very different from a CASA account fraud. A lending fraud is very different from a payment fraud. So the fraud is an area which is not yet fully regulated. It needs to evolve over a period of time. As a result, if you look at a large bank, they'll be fighting fraud by having multiple systems, one for credit card, one for payments. And as a leader of fraud in a bank, if I want to look at a 360-degree view of a customer across, that will be missing today because I'll have to look at different places for different places to look at it. So I think some help from regulation on the fraud aspect will be very helpful as we go forward. I'm sure all the regulation and the governments are thinking about it, but anti-money laundering is very well governed today. That's my view.
Mayank, can you give us some live examples from your company on how you're managing risks, frauds?
Yeah, sure. In fact, what I'll do is I'll split this into two parts, right? I think Ripunjay talked about who is the user, right, on which the fraud is happening. And then there is the actor, right? Now, if you have to split it and figure out what's the right approach, right? You have to look at the user, but you also have to look at the employees of these institutions, right? Because that's often where the acting part may start invariably, right? Just purely in the banking sector, right? There are approximately 2 million employees just in India. And banking or BFSI on its own, in fact, impacts approximately hundreds of millions of workforce. Now, if I have to start it on the user side, right? And again, coming back to just letting the audience know that there are capabilities across platforms which can be leveraged to talk about addressing risk. So I was talking about on-device AI. Just by the way, if you are using an Android device, we actually use on-device AI also to mitigate scam detection of messages. I encourage you to check out or just search for Google Gemini Nano. Gemini Nano is the on-device AI model which sits on premium flagship devices. And it does have like a compute requirement which needs to be there on the device, but the repository of models that can leverage that model is hugely expanding. Then we also have an open source model called Gemma, which is multimodal. It can work on text, video, and images. And all of these models actually can sit on the device and you can interact directly with them on the device. And you can give them this data of messages, of any application, triggers, which can be used on device as well directly. So that's on the user side in general, from a platform perspective. I also encourage you to check out the Android show, which in fact, a lot of features that we have are very much anchored on security on the device, because what happens is you're using an application, you're accessing messages, you're clicking on a URL. I think these are three typical vectors, right, of how fraud would happen on a device. We have mitigation measures across all the three. So that's one, that's the user part. On the employee part, and that's where I actually work very closely with B2B partners and institutions directly. One feature maybe which I can talk about right now is you have the banking institutions, right? Or you might have people working in the stock industry. Many of the regulations, at least globally, and I think that is probably still in evaluation in India, but globally, the devices which are used in the banking / financial industries are required to be managed when they are being used by the employees. In fact, we have a mechanism on such managed devices to archive messages which have been exchanged on that official phone, to make sure, because there are regulations around logging of messaging, whatever is happening on the device. So we have a mechanism where you can archive this directly and have that as a repository at your end. So these are some of the select frameworks and messages that we have. In fact, I was just discussing with my colleagues just when we were sitting over for tea, that we on these devices we also have the capability to collect signals. From a security standpoint, these devices don't have to be managed, but let's say if you're using a financing application, let's say if you're using Slack on these phones, right? And you want to make sure it's being used on a secure phone on the employee side. So you have frameworks where you can get device signals before the access to the application, like a Slack, like a Salesforce, is given on the device itself. So I encourage you, so this is called as device trust. I encourage you to check that out as well. There are blogs out there. But that's how we at Google, specifically with Android, are addressing those kinds of frauds and risks.
Mayank, I have another question for you, and then I'll ask other panelists also. So, if device is really at the center of things, coming back to our original topic, what happens to the cost? Because I was speaking to a telecom company, and they said 4G to 5G conversion is not happening at the pace that was expected because people are not buying those high-end phones. So is that a challenge? How can that be addressed? Affordability that IDAI chairman was also talking about, like we should keep that in mind.
No, definitely a pertinent topic. So in fact, see, and I'm sure this is something which you experience as well when you talk to a lot of the folks who travel globally and experience India, right? See, India is a land of patterns and anti-patterns, all right? So there's a lot of learning that typically happens from India for the world. Now, interestingly, when we're talking about the growth of, let's say the premium segment of devices, just last year, if you had to take the number of devices which were sold in the $700 and above segment, which is like 55,000 rupees and above. So we were ranked second in terms of total shipments, and we were tied up with Japan. So there is this dichotomy in terms of, a lot of the premium devices are actually being sold, and a lot of them actually are, choosing Android as a form factor. So that's one part. The second part is how can we enable in this AI world, right, to make sure that users and specifically employees of organizations can get phones or seize devices which have these premium AI capabilities at an affordable cost. So one of the ways that we are addressing with our device manufacturer, in fact, with our leasing partners as well, is while there are programs, of course, to make devices affordable, and that's more, on the lending side, which the other panelists can definitely talk about it more. There is something called as smartphone leasing, which a lot of companies are adopting. So this is an analog. I'm sure you would understand or know a little bit about car lease. This is an analog to that. So what happens is based on some frameworks which are established between the company, the person or the distributor who is selling those devices, and of course there is a leasing entity involved and an attached insurance entity as well. You're able to give out phones on a lease as an official phone to the employees for a particular period. What happens is the employees get benefits because of some of the taxation clauses. The employers also get benefits because they are not taking the full phone on their books. It's basically a service. And then we also have the option that once the lease period is done with, you can actually upgrade to a new premium phone, or you can basically potentially own that device back based on the buyback price that you pay. So in fact, we have that covered with our partners here, Brilliant. So in fact, it's called Smart Employee Purchase Program. I definitely encourage you to come to our booth if you want to discover and learn more about this. But there are a lot of companies who are slowly adopting this. It's obviously takes a lot of time because this is about employer plus employee awareness in terms of why they should opt for this option. But this is definitely something which is beneficial for the employees and the employers. The reason why the adoption is scaling right now, because now we have the tools to manage the full life cycle of the device from the point of entry, where the employee experiences that phone, right up to when he or she needs to upgrade, or maybe just have that official phone being transferred as a personal phone. So these are some ways, net new ways that are being adopted, and many of these are actually coming from India and are being adopted across the world as well. So I think that's one part of affordability which I can talk about. There are, of course, other measures as well where we are trying to see how devices generally can be made more affordable via financing options. But that's, of course, a conversation of the device manufacturer, with the financing partners.
Guru, any problem-solving software to make things more affordable so that people from smaller towns, people from lower income strata, they can access devices through which they can get onto fintech.
For sure. I think the way I look at it, continuing from where Mayank left, banks exist because they need to lend. I mean, everybody puts in money, but at the end of the day, they lend, right? I mean, now the segments they are not willing to lend is where non-banking finance companies came in, because they are charging a little higher interest rate, they're willing to take risks. But today, if you look at the world, large players have come who have started this BNPL options, buy now, pay later. So literally they say there's no interest to be paid. You divide it to EMIs, pay everything. So I think there are organizations we've dealt with who are only focusing on this segment. They don't do anything else but do BNPL. How does technology players help? The technology players have a tie-up with such payment providers. There's a pre-integrated tie-up so that as soon as you launch, it starts working and you go to market quickly, number one. So that's how the technology helps. Second, just taking a cue from Mayank, the fintech space, which is coming in today, it's all about data. I mean, everybody needs data, build data models, etc. So I've seen a specific focus area of a fintech who have gone to all leading colleges, right, and given them the phones where probably the class monitor or the leader of the class will collect money on a regular basis. So what happens here is at the end of 2 years, you've built a behavior of each person in the class as to whether he's paying on time, how he's paying, etc. The moment they're out of college, you already have a behavioral model, not to worry about credit bureau and other things, so that you can finance them. So we're getting them into the financing world. So I think what is happening is two parts. One is the technology, since it's all API driven today. API means exchange of information, just to simplify it. All the technology is API driven today. There are tie-ups happening at B2B level, where we tie up with the payment providers already, have the technology ready so that you can implement for BNPL. Second, it helps to look at the alternative data, look at the data behaviors, which will help us give those financing models appropriately.
Siva, I will change the question a bit for you. Looking ahead, who do you think will shape the digital banking world? Will it be banks? Will it be fintech players? Will it be the technology players? Or will all of them do it together? How do you look ahead?
So obviously, we all have to do it together. There is no one player who can actually do it all. The device manufacturer, they have their own goal. The tech players, the banking, the fintech, everyone has their role to play. Most importantly, as all of us were talking about, each and every layer has its own set of information, right? So say, for example, the device has its own set of information, the operating system has its own set of information, the app layer has its own set of information, banks have their own set of information, each do their own KYC, like fintech do their own KYC, bank do their own KYC. The biggest problem today is like all this is segmented, segregated, right? So now if actually we can collaborate and we can empower each other, and if there are actually good standards which actually can help in this collaboration, then that is what is actually going to win the race. So the biggest difference will come from the ecosystem, not from the individual players. So when the ecosystem wins, everyone wins.
When the ecosystem wins, everyone wins. Ripunjay, your thoughts briefly on what is in future and what kind of R&D is your company looking at?
The way the world is changing every 3 months, it's like the wave of technology which is coming after model. So one of the thing is we at Paytm definitely believes that it will be a game changing in next 1 or 1.5 years how we transact, especially on the financial side. The form factor of the device can change because app today have icon based browsing, but if the like ChatGPT or any Gemini, they are more voice based browsing. So the apps will also change for good, because then the people will be just able to talk to their app. Okay, do me a recharge to my wife of 100 rupees. And why you need a screen for that? So the cost will also come down. The second is, it is a constant time that we have to keep our minds and the goals open, and we have to keep on see what is the end use we want to drive. Especially in a country like India, the end use is how we move from digital reach to digital trust, because we know that UPI has also reached at a particular level. The next 30, 40 crores of people need a simpler way of adoption. They need a more trustful way of adoption. It is not that they do not interact with apps. They are very good watching videos, reels, etc. But they don't have a feeling of trust while doing a financial transaction digitally. So that is where we are investing our technology and doing R&D, that how can we build a trust and how can we make them easy or convenience to transact digitally and add into the Indian economy.